Who is the Atacama humanoid? And what has so many people intrigued by the circumstances surrounding this mysterious entity found in southern Chile in 2002 by a vacationing family? The skeletal remains of the Atacama humanoid exhibit an oversized head, extraterrestrial form, and minuscule size, a mere 6 inches long. Over the course of the past decade, internet rumors have theorized about his origin. Now, with the recent release of the documentary Sirius, researchers think they may have finally found the answer. But have they really? In the film, a Stanford University scientist, Dr. Gary Nolan, declares Atacama's DNA to be of human origin, leading some to conclude the humanoid's a mummified fetus. But when an expert in pediatric bone disorders, Dr. Ralph Lackman of the well-known Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, California, examined the body, he concluded that the bone growth suggested a 6 to 8-year-old, and that no known form of dwarfism could account for the anomalies found in the specimen. The contradictory information has left experts in the field baffled. Could a 6-inch human form survive for 8 years? Could an extraterrestrial possibly have the same DNA as humans? By leaving noted researchers with more questions than answers, the Atacama humanoid has made people such as Dr. Nolan more open to UFO phenomena and other mysteries contained within the archives of the Weekly Strange.
In 2003, in a Chilean town in the Atacama Desert, treasure hunter Oscar Munoz was digging in the grounds of an abandoned church when he came across a white cloth that contained a strange skeleton, no bigger than the size of a pen. The creature had hard teeth, a bulging head, and unlike humans, it only had 10 ribs. A Chilean tabloid newspaper picked up the story and ran the shocking headline that a horrible extraterrestrial dwarf had been discovered. The mummified skeleton exchanged hands for several years, until it ended up in Barcelona, where former Dr. Stephen Greer learned of its mysterious existence. Since retiring as a doctor, Greer has dedicated his life to lobbying the US government to reveal alleged covered-up information about extraterrestrial visits to Earth. Upon seeing the skeletal remains, Greer believed the skeleton, nicknamed Atta, could be the evidence of alien life that he'd been searching for. Since the discovery of Atta, both scientists and ufologists have speculated over its origins. With the Atacama Desert being one of the driest areas on the planet, it's perfectly suited to preserving remains, meaning the mummy could have been preserved for centuries. So, enlisting the aid of paleontologists, Greer set about proving that the mummified skeleton was an ancient alien for his UFO documentary Sirius, which introduced Atta to the world. The documentary explored the theory that extraterrestrials are able to travel immense distances between their planets and our own, using alternative forms of energy. It further claimed that this is the very same technology that our governments and corporations keep secret from us in order to capitalize on profits from oil, coal, and nuclear power. However, when paleontologists analyzed the skeleton, they found that the DNA was modern, indicating that the specimen was only a few decades old. Then, Stanford University immunologist Gary Nolan contacted the filmmakers and offered to make his own scientific analysis of the specimen. After sequencing Atta's DNA, Nolan concluded that there was no doubt that Atta was human. Furthermore, he was able to specify that the baby's mother was Chilean, which would explain why the body was found buried in the grounds of a church. Shockingly, after examining X-rays, Nolan's team concluded that, based on the density of the skeleton's knee bones, it appeared to be the equivalent of a 6 to 8-year-old child. Nolan attempted to explain the minuscule skeleton by suggesting that Atta suffered from a severe form of dwarfism, but no genes for dwarfism were found during his team's genetic analysis. The second possibility Nolan suggested was that Atta was in fact a fetus, which would explain why it only had 10 ribs, as the lower, floating ribs had not yet fully formed. Natural history curator Paolo Viscardi also supports the idea that the Atacama skeleton was a normal fetus, suggesting that its head became distorted as a result of an illegal backstreet abortion. Meanwhile, Viscardi also argues that the high density of the bone is typical of mummified specimens, and not an indication that it grew to be at least 6 years old. Viscardi supports his hypothesis by pointing out that Chilean abortion law is one of the most restrictive in the world, and as a result makes illegal abortions fairly common. On his blog, Viscardi criticized the lack of respect surrounding the reporting of Atta, especially after the preliminary results confirmed that it was the skeleton of a young human. Although Stephen Greer's film Sirius documented the discovery that Atta was of human origin, the trailer for the documentary still suggests that DNA analysis resulted in the creature being of unknown classification. Despite the scientific fact that Atta is human, it seems the Atacama skeleton will remain a symbol for the possibility of extraterrestrial life.
Barcelona. To retrieve the evidence. Dr. Bravo.
Hi.
Are you ready for the trip?
I'm ready for the trip. I'm so excited. We're going to do some very wonderful work, and I can't wait to get the results.
Upon arriving in Spain to look at the being for the very first time, I was kind of skeptical. It was definitely a game changer for my thought process to actually see it in person than to see it on film. The first thing we had to do was go to the radiology lab because we needed x-rays and CAT scans before we did anything.
Porque esto es, ya se lo comenté, que era un poco difícil de hacer.
The best we can get.
Lo mejor que podamos. Porque evidentemente no se puede manipular para nada.
No.
The head radiologist at the center saw the being and was quite impressed. And the first thing she said was, "Wow, that looks like an alien."
That's really okay. This is fabulous. Yes. Yeah, for that, yeah. Okay, that's good.
This one is complete.
When the CAT scan images started coming up on the computer, it was just profound. And I saw inside the bone, and I saw, organs and lung material, brain material. I knew that this was not a hoax, it was not fake, that this was actually some sort of living creature.
Microsurgery, because they were smart enough then to put in these millimeter-wide bone holes where the arteries go in to feed the bone marrow. And so now the challenge is to prove what it is, right? My interest, frankly, is that it's anything unusual or anything paranormal. I would like to prove that this is human. I would like to prove that this is just an interesting mutation. But obviously, if you leave your mind open, or I should say, if you leave your mind closed to alternatives, you'll never see what those alternatives might actually be. In every situation with scientists, your reputation's at stake. I have every expectation that even doing this is going to lead to some ribbing from some of my colleagues, right? But I think that that's perfectly acceptable. Who's going to validate these things? If someone isn't willing to step forward and do it right, then you're going to have it sitting out there forever, hanging in limbo, right? I mean, if you let other people and their opinions stop you from believing what you know to be true, then all you're doing is stopping the possibility of progress.
Anytime.
The DNA analysis is being done by some of the world's best. But even the world's best need to be cross-checked, which is why I'm doing the 3 different facilities. So this is an example of how the analysis is done using what's called a genome browser. And it's more or less a schematic representation of the chromosomes and at a very high level of resolution. So the sequence that we got from the mitochondria tells us with extremely high confidence that the mother was an indigenous Indian from the Chilean area, and the haplotype is called B2A. Now, the other thing that immediately fell out of the analysis is that it's male. It has so-called Y chromosome material. In fact, it's got a full Y chromosome. It probably died in the last century, if I were to make a guess. I can say with absolute certainty that it is not a monkey, right? It is human, or as close to human, closer to human than chimpanzees would be. But when you count up the number of mutations that we're observing, what we're seeing is more than what we would expect to be caused by simple cell division. When the sequencer is creating or making these reads, it's doing it more or less at random. So what does the computer program do that people have written and designed? It takes every one of the little sequences and tries to match it against the known. And then anything that doesn't match it puts in a little side file and says this is unknown. At a certain point, when enough knowns are matched, I can feel comfortable saying, this is human, right? But if I'm not careful and I don't pay attention to what's in the garbage can, right, what the computer program is throwing away, I could literally be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. What we've done is we've scaled back and we're seeing several chromosomes and pieces of chromosomes across the top, which basically leaves us with a very strange conundrum, right? Here you've got this 6-inch tall, let's call it human, right, because the DNA says that so far it's human, at least the way that we're looking at it. This gene, PCNT, which is known to be associated with primordial dwarfism, we don't have any mutations here. It lived to the age of 6 to 8. Obviously, it was breathing, it was eating, it was metabolizing, and it wasn't living in an environment where there was a lot of advanced medical attention that was given to it to allow it to live to that age. Calls into question how big the thing might have been when it was born. So genetically, you might explain that by saying that there's some advanced aging mutation, something that caused the bone to age anomalously quickly. A gene that's known to be associated with progeria, that also no changes there. So the next problem, of course, is the ribs and the number of ribs in the specimen. Only 10, whereas there's supposed to be 12. So there are no mutations which are specifically associated with that kind of phenomena because it's rarely, if ever, seen. The digits are all correct. The hands are all correct. There are problems with the face. So there's a mid-face hypoplasia, and then there's the larger skull. So again, I think in summary, there are genes associated with any one or two of the anomalies that we see in the specimen, but there is no mutation which is known to accommodate or call for all of the mutations. Even with the things that we know could be assigned to one or more of the anomalies, we don't find them in the genetics of this specimen. That leaves open the question, what genetics is causing the anomalies that we are observing? So although I entered this thinking DNA was the answer, it made me realize that in the context of the bigger biology questions, there are other levels of control that need to be understood and answered. The non-coding RNA, epigenetics, etc. And things that we probably haven't even thought of yet. So if I just look at, this is base pair 19,800,000 or so at this edge of the open region. I can go all the way over here, and now I'm at 21,000 or 22,000. So the answer is not finished, and it's not as easy as actually, frankly, I thought it was going to be at the beginning. So that's basically 2 million base pairs of DNA where nothing seems to sit. It's just like the way societies do things. They try to fit things in boxes. We have literally written a computer program that does exactly that, tries to fit it in the box. Doesn't seem very efficient, so on that basis, people would call it junk. But I think we now know that there's any of a number of other features of what DNA is doing in there. It is expressed. And so we need to be careful, obviously, that we don't let our instincts or the programs that we write to match our instincts make the decisions for us. No matter what, for me, this has been a fascinating, more than an exercise. As soon as I've collated this information into a form that other people can take advantage of, and it's accepted for publication, I'm just going to put it out on the web. You know, I don't have the resources to study and follow down every single angle that this opens up. But, you know, maybe there is a listener out there who will be sufficiently intrigued by this to do the analyses themselves, and maybe they'll find something that I missed. Great. If additional samples or examples are seen of this, I'll be the first in line to want to sequence it, because then all bets are off. I want to say other things here, but I also don't want to open myself up for, you know, attack.
This search may have uncovered a major finding about life in the universe and its origins. What is this being? Could it be a missing link in evolution? Could it be an entirely new species? Or simply a disease we have never seen before? Or could this be an extraterrestrial being from another world? Whatever the case may be, this challenges the boundaries of human scientific knowledge. Dr. Gary Nolan has set a new precedent for scientific investigation and rigor in the realm of the seemingly impossible.
It's interesting to note that you know, you guys did kind of spend a bulk of this film on this, on the you know, how's it, the ADA, this like small little kind of humanoid, you know. How did that come up? Like, how did you, you know, in the process of making it? Because that's something that's pretty like huge, you know, when you're kind of like,
it came out of everything out of this project. The crazy thing about it has been it's all kind of come out of this crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, like organic process. So there was someone, Dr. Greer was aware of the specimen. He had visited the facility that has it once, taken some photos, he'd shown it to us and said, if we can raise enough money at some point down the line, I'd love to go get some samples and do this. We ended up also getting in contact with the geneticist from Stanford, Dr. Gary Nolan, through the crowdsourcing process, who said he would love to, once he found out about it, would love to step up and actually do the scientific analysis and research. So it's basically Dr. Greer and his team went to Spain, took the samples, brought them back under the instructions of the Stanford, you know, scientists, and then, you know, the rest is history, as they say, in terms of the testing that's still ongoing. I mean, this is something that it could represent, you know, one of the most significant scientific breakthroughs in a long time.
Well, and the great thing that I've seen recently is even like Yahoo News and I think CNN and things like that have really actually taken it rather seriously and looking into like kind of the origins of this kind of little creature or human or whatever it may be. You know, what's the current status of that right now? Like, I mean, where are they at with kind of discovering what this thing is?
Well, as of right now, the current status is I think science has hit its wall. Dr. Gary Nolan admits it in the film. He's like, I came to this thing thinking I could prove in the DNA, I could tell you if it's human or not human. But then overall, obviously the way our computers are built, everything is mapping towards the human genome. And so at about 91% connection to the human genome, however, there's really dissimilar phenotype-genotype occurrences. Like, for example, the thing is less than 6 inches tall, 6 to 8 years old according to all the bone, you know, calcification. But there's nothing in the DNA to represent that. And that's almost, I mean, it has 10 ribs when it should usually have 12. It has, there's nothing in the DNA to represent that.
The problem is not proving that UFOs exist. It's when you begin to expose the energy and propulsion systems behind how they're getting here.
What scientists need to do is they need to look at the hardcore evidence, decide that, oh my gosh, ETs are real, and then get over that. Then you can start extrapolating.
These sciences have been around for decades. They have been ruthlessly kept secret because of the power of a centralized petrodollar oil, gas, coal system. And right now, these misanthropic sociopaths are running the planet into the ground.
Governments have not gone far enough, so we've decided that as people to form our own movement.
All right, game on, roll one.
What we are attempting to achieve is a device which defeats the perpendicular force of gravity.
We have so many modes of converting quantum vacuum energy or zero-point energy.
This possible EVE was found in the Atacama Desert.
We have the best scientists that are going to be doing the DNA testing.
We have 1,150 teams of CE5 ambassadors.
I can attest to the fact that real phenomenon happens here.
And this is probably the most important thing going on this planet today, and yet nobody talks about it.
If we come together, we can make this happen in a matter of months, not decades. For this is the destiny of humanity.
How many of you guys remember this? For quite some time, it was thought that this was an alien. If you don't know about it, let's do a little catch up real quick. This mysterious tiny skeleton is the skeleton of what is believed to be a 6-year-old child. The mummy had 10 pairs of ribs instead of 12 and an elongated head, and for that reason, many people believed that this was an alien. Due to where it was found, the Atacama Desert, people named this the Ata alien or Atacama alien. And ever since it was discovered, it was believed to be very old, I mean ancient. People thought that this was an alien. Apparently the mystery has been solved. DNA test confirmed that the skeleton nicknamed Ada was human. Why did it take this long for them to discover this? I have no idea. That just raises up all types of flags. I'm like, yo, hold on, this is weird. Why now? A professor of microbiology at Stanford University said in a news release, I heard about this specimen through a friend of mine and I managed to get a picture of it. You can't look at this specimen and not think it's interesting. It's quite dramatic. Apparently, it was the fetus of a girl who had suffered from a host of severe genetic mutations. According to the researchers, her mutation was so bad that she wasn't able to actually even feed herself. In her condition, she would have ended up in the neonatal ICU, but given where the specimen was found, such things were simply not available. The test also showed that the remains weren't ancient, as some had theorized, but only about 40 years old. So now they're saying that what people thought was ancient is actually 40 years old, and that what people thought was an alien due to the way that it looks is actually a human baby girl that was a fetus. And for some reason, all the way up to now, no one could have figured this out. Really? Okay, sure, I'll believe you, no problem. While this started as the story about aliens and went international, it really is a story about a human tragedy. A woman had a malformed baby. It was preserved in a manner and then hawked and sold as a strange artifact. It turns out to be human. Fascinating genetic story which we might learn something important to help others. May she rest in peace. Yeah, okay. Bullshit! I don't think so. For me, it will always be an alien. I don't care what they say. It's an alien. What do you guys think about it? Is it an alien or is it a baby girl like they just said right now? Think about this one. Why did it take this long to find out that it was a baby girl? Just saying. Just saying. So make sure to write that in the comment section below. Also, you want one of these bad boys right here? Use promo code WEIRD10. It's in the description section below, the link to where you can buy yourself one of these chairs right here. 10% off for you if you use my promo code WEIRD10. Make sure to click the like button if you enjoyed this video, subscribe if you're not, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.
I'ma let the world call me Edison. You need to take your medicine. This is what they fed us in. It's something that we dreaded. It's the worst place to ever been. We need a set of regimen. Need to keep it moving. Need to keep it pedaling. I am not a human boy. I'm a rare specimen. Your favorite rapper's gonna wanna be my new nemesis. I'm out to turn down. You're gonna be my witnesses. My ex-girl wanna be my best friend. Had to do what.
When the
the mummified remains of a 6-inch humanoid were found in an abandoned mining town in Chile's Atacama Desert 15 years ago, speculation on its origins ran wild. The skeleton, which was sold to a private collector in Spain, was so bizarre it appeared in a documentary as potential evidence for alien life. Now scientists in California have extracted DNA from the mummy's bones and pieced together the real and tragic story of the individual, known as Atta. Rather than a visitor from another world, Atta was a girl who appears to have been stillborn, or to have died immediately after birth, with devastating mutations that shaped her extraordinary body. Atta's remains were found in 2003 in La Noria, an old nitrate mining town, reportedly wrapped in white cloth tied with a violet ribbon. The skeleton was remarkable in many ways. While only 6 inches tall, the bones had some features of a child aged 6 to 8. Instead of the usual 12 pairs of ribs found on humans, Atta had only 10 pairs. The head was an elongated cone shape. DNA analysis reveals that her appearance can be explained by a series of genetic mutations that are linked to morphism and other bone and growth disorders. The skeleton is most likely from a premature baby, or from one soon after birth. Sanket Bhattacharya, a researcher at UCSF, said she found 64 gene variants in Atta's DNA that seemed likely to be damaging. She found that, incredibly, 10 of the variations were linked to skeletal problems including short stature and 11 pairs of ribs. Beyond her skeletal malformations, Atta may have had a genetic condition known as congenital diaphragmatic hernia. Gary Nolan, a professor of microbiology and immunology at the Stanford University School of Medicine, said, "Nothing like this had been seen before. Certainly, nobody had looked into the genetics of it." The girl's cone-shaped skull remains a mystery even after the genetic analysis. It has previously been suggested that the unusual shape could have been caused by a condition known as oxphilia, or terophilia. While this started as a story about aliens, and went international, it's really a story of a human tragedy. A woman had a malformed baby, it was preserved in a manner and then hawked or sold as a strange artifact. May she rest in peace.
Hey guys, it's Mike Chen. This is a really interesting story. So about 15 years ago, the discovery of a 6-inch mummified skeleton from northern Chile's Atacama Desert led to widespread speculation about its origins because, well, it's 6 inches. And the bone of contention was whether the skeletal remains were that of an alien, an unrecognized primate species, or a human fetus. Because if you're just looking at this, there's definitely something really strange about it. The mummified skeleton was found when an immature collector by the name of Oscar Munoz chanced upon a leather pouch containing a white cloth. This was when he was exploring La Noria, a deserted nitrate mining town in Chile's Atacama region. When he unwrapped the cloth, Oscar uncovered a skeleton, hence named as Atta after the site of his finding. Now, the presumption of Atta being an alien continued for many years until recently when a genomic analysis shed new light on his ancestry. Now, just looking at this, I think I would have guessed alien because with a height of about 6 inches, Atta's diminutive frame really stood out. Despite its tiny size, the skeleton was fully formed with matured features. It exhibited hardened teeth, an elongated and angular skull, pronounced oval and slanted eye sockets, and 10 pairs of ribs as opposed to the standard 12 pairs of an adult human. The skeleton was estimated to be around 40 years old, and preliminary attempts to date its bone age led to the conclusion that the specimen was that of a young child aged no more than 6 or 8 years. In looking at it, it's really no surprise that since Atta's unearthing in 2003, the probability of the Atacama humanoid being an alien has been rife, more so because of a 2013 UFO documentary titled Sirius, which fueled the conjecture. In this documentary, American ufologist Stephen M. Greer attempted to demystify the origin of Atta and speculated that the mummy had its genesis in extraterrestrials. So intrigued by the mystery surrounding Atta's origins, Gary P. Nolan, a professor of microbiology and immunology at Stanford University, decided to to conduct an in-depth analysis of the skeleton's well-preserved DNA by extracting a sample from the bone marrow of Atta's ribs. Accordingly, necessary permissions were sought from the skeleton's president, Ramon Navia Osorio, who eventually bought Atta from Oscar Munoz and treasured it in a private collection in Spain. The genetic study of the skeleton made some startling revelations, which indicated that not only was Atta a human female, but she was probably of Chilean descent, with the likelihood of her parallel lineage to European ancestry not being ruled out either. Moreover, the whole genome sequence analysis divulged that Atta had a rare bone aging disorder triggered by multiple mutations in the genes associated with bone development. This premature aging disease gave rise to the false impression of her being much older than she truly was. The extent of the skeleton's genetic defects and its tiny size further suggest a probable cause of miscarriage, or the possibility that the skeletal remains belong to a premature born human fetus or a stillborn baby. So if this is true, what exactly was the nature of Atta's bone disease that led to the accelerated aging of her bones and her bizarre appearance? Well, DNA analysis attributes Atta's deformed form to the 64 mutations in the 7 genes related to the development of the skeletal system. These genetic mutations are thought to be the cause behind the anomalous specimen's various and musculoskeletal abnormalities, ranging from dwarfism and a rib count oddity to scoliosis. Also, a series of mutations occurred in several other genes, including those linked to collagen production. According to Dr. Atta Boot, a senior author of the study conducted on Atta's DNA sample, the rarity of the skeleton's mutations makes it really hard to believe that Atta's disorder was hereditary. Rather, he presumes that environmental factors had a role to play in Atta's genetic mutations. The fact that the skeletal remains were discovered in a mining town with abandoned nitrate mines gives rise to the likelihood of DNA damage, owing to the child being exposed to chemicals from nitrate mining early on in her development stage. Now, although Atta is confirmed not to be an alien, but her case is really fascinating for researchers because it is really rare to come across such a high number of mutations in a single specimen, and that some of her genetic alterations had been virtually unheard of or unknown to science until their chance finding in Atta's DNA. Also, researchers believe that these invaluable findings, coupled with the tools and technology used to unearth them, can play a crucial role in the accurate and prompt diagnosis and treatment of genetic mutations-related cases in patients in the days to come. So although just looking at the picture, it did seem like something was really strange here, and it was a lot of strange and rare conditions to cause Atta to turn out the way she did. And even though Atta is not of alien origin, it still proves that there's so much we don't know about the human body, so much there's still to be discovered about us right here. Anyway, really interesting story I wanted to share with you guys. Thank you all so much for watching. See you later.
DNA tests reveal surprising details about tiny Atacama alien. The most comprehensive study to date performed on the so-called Atacama alien has revealed, according to the first study, that 8% of the DNA was unmatched to human DNA. The second set of DNA tests matched 98% of the DNA. Remember the alien-like creature discovered in the Atacama Desert of Chile a while ago? Well, new DNA results have revealed a number of peculiar characteristics about the mysterious creature. A complete genomic study of a skeleton discovered more than a decade ago in the Atacama Desert, Chile, and falsely taken as an alien, has revealed unpublished bone molecular rarities. The findings of researchers at the Stanford University School of Medicine eliminate any remaining dilemmas on the planetary origin of the specimen, assuring that it is human and not an alien. The analysis also answers questions about the mysterious skeletal remains that have long been a genetic enigma. Now, after 5 years of genomic analysis, Gary Nolan, professor of microbiology and immunology at Stanford, and Atul Butte, director of the Institute of Computational Health Sciences at the University of California, San Francisco, in the United States, have identified the mutations responsible for the anomalous sample. The researchers found mutations in not one, but several genes known to control bone development. In addition, some of these molecular oddities have never been described before. The mysterious-looking skeleton, nicknamed Atta, was discovered more than a decade ago in an abandoned town in the Atacama Desert in Chile. After changing owners and finally finding a permanent home in Spain, the mummified specimen began to attract public attention. Just 6 inches tall, about 15 centimeters, about the length of a dollar bill, with an elongated, angular skull and sunken, tilted eye sockets, the possibility of Atta coming from another world began to circulate on the internet as people started speaking about aliens with extremely tiny bodies. I had heard about this specimen through a friend of mine, and I managed to get an image of it, says Nolan. You cannot look at this specimen and not think it's interesting. It is quite dramatic. Then I said to my friend, look, whatever it is, if it has DNA, I can do the analysis. With the help of Ralph Lachman, a professor of radiology at Stanford and an expert in a type of pediatric bone disease, Nolan made things clear. His analysis pointed to a decisive conclusion. This was the skeleton of a human woman, probably a fetus, who had suffered serious genetic mutations. In addition, Nolan saw that Atta, although most likely a fetus, had the bone composition of a 6-year-old girl, an indication that she had a rare bone aging disorder. Nolan detected that 8% of the DNA was unmatched by human DNA, but that was due to a degraded sample, not to extraterrestrial biology. Later, a more sophisticated analysis could match up to 98% of the DNA. The genomic results confirmed Atta's Chilean lineage and presented a series of mutations in 7 genes that, separately or in combinations, contribute to various bone deformities, facial malformations or skeletal dysplasia, more commonly known as dwarfism. Some of these mutations, although found in genes that are known to cause disease, have never before been associated with bone growth or developmental disorders. Knowing these new mutational variants could be useful, says Nolan, because they add to the reservoir of known mutations that must be sought in humans with this type of bone or physical.
Nearly 2 decades ago, the rumors began. In the Atacama Desert of northern Chile, someone had discovered a tiny mummified alien. An amateur collector exploring an old nitrate mining town was said to have come across a white cloth in a leather pouch. Unwrapping it, he found a 6-inch long skeleton. After trading hands in Chile and eventually finding a permanent home in Spain, the mummified specimen started to garner public attention, and scientists soon got hold of it. They nicknamed the skeleton Ada. Ada stood 6 inches tall, about the length of a dollar bill, and when its pictures surfaced online, the internet began labeling it as extraterrestrial, and all sorts of rumors about it started spreading like wildfire. Despite its size, the skeleton was remarkably complete. It even had hardened teeth, and yet there were striking anomalies. It had 10 ribs instead of the usual 12, had these giant eye sockets, and a long skull that ended in a point. The skeleton puzzled researchers and excited conspiracy theorists when it was found in 2003 because it was so strange. Tiny and deformed, it seemed human-like but was missing 2 of its ribs and had features that made it look adult-like, despite its very small size. Ada ended up in a private collection. Its bones contained DNA that not only shows she was human, but that she belonged to the local population. What's more, the researchers identified in her DNA a group of mutations in genes related to bone development. Some of these mutations might be responsible for the skeleton's bizarre form, causing a hereditary disorder never before documented in humans. The scientists eventually managed to reconstruct much of Ada's genome. She was a girl they found most closely related to indigenous Chileans, but she also had a substantial amount of European ancestry. Scientists have not carried out any precise dating of the skeleton, so they can't say exactly when Ada lived, but her European heritage suggested it was sometime after Chile was colonized in the 1500s. Also, after death, DNA disintegrates into fragments, which become smaller over the centuries. Ada's DNA fragments are still large, another clue that she is less than 500 years old. While her elongated head was striking, it wasn't the strangest feature of Ada's skeleton. Despite being the size of a human fetus, about the length of a pen, her bones were as developed in some ways as those of a 6-year-old. But some of Ada's mutations are new to science. It's possible some caused her skeleton to mature quickly, even while failing to grow to normal size. The curious remains of Ada caught the eye of Gary Nolan, a professor of microbiology and immunology at Stanford University in California, who offered to study the specimen. In 2013, he concluded that Ada was human, but the reasons for the dramatic deformities were far from clear. Nolan believes that Ada was stillborn or died immediately after birth, perhaps 40 years before her remains were discovered. He thought that Ada was so badly malformed that she couldn't even feed properly. Nolan concluded that this was the skeleton of a human female, likely a fetus that had suffered severe genetic mutations. In addition, Nolan saw that Ada, though most likely a fetus, had the bone composition of a 6-year-old, an indication that she had a rare bone aging disorder, most probably being caused by the mother's exposure to chemicals from the nitrogen mining in the area where she was born. So no, this strange alien is not actually an alien. It's a rare, genetically deformed human baby. So hope that clears your doubts. Press the like button if you learned something new today, and be sure to subscribe to my channel for interesting videos like this every week.